All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming to AMN show tonight. It's 8 p.m. right here in Lagos, and some people are watching us from the UK. There's an echo. And so all across the globe, we're live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook and Instagram, and all across other forums. So with my guests today are here because they're, first of all, they're all men, and they work in different sectors of professional sectors. But today is International Men's Day, and we didn't want this day to end without us talking to men and saying, hey, what do you guys think about what's going on in the men's world? And so I have with me Pastor Shegun Banjoko, I have Akin Rotimi, and I have Tunde Akiemi here. And they're going to introduce themselves briefly before we'll continue with the questioning. Thank you for being my guest today. Pastor Shegun, would you want to start?
Hello, good evening, everyone. As you've heard, my name is Shegun Banjoko, and I have pioneered the Unity Ministry in Harlowtown, Essex since 2009, when I relocated to the UK with my family. And I'm an architect by background and a very keen researcher at heart. I have had the privilege of pursuing some very heartfelt career in concentrated solar power, and I've had the privilege of just completing my Doctor of Engineering just in August. So I'm a designer at heart. I love to interact and above all to share and learn. So it will be a pleasure to make some contributions and learn here today. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much for that. I've known Pastor Shegun for a long time. I call him Shegabi. I've known him for a while. We known each other since university days. So welcome. I'm glad you're one of my guests today.
Thank you.
All right, Akin Rotimi, would you take it on?
Thank you very much, Dr. Marino. My name is Aki Rotimi. I have a background at the nexus of communications and the public service, and also to a very large extent the civic sector. I'm the co-founder of SASCARE Foundation, which has as one of its focus areas mental health and wellness advocacy. Part of what we also do is providing some support for military widows here in Nigeria, and mental health is one of the things that we look at, as a niche population that have gone through significant trauma. I am also currently running for office to go to the House of Representatives in Nigeria, and one of the core focus areas that I have is health, and we all know that there's no health without mental health. So part of what I'll be looking to do when I'm elected to office by God's grace is making sure that we have the appropriate legislation and the appropriate policy framework and programs to support mental health. First of all, mental health awareness and proper understanding of members of the public of these issues, and then also the right support systems down to the primary healthcare level, to support people with mental health illness and challenges. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Akin Rotimi, for being here. And look, Akin, we've worked together. He was the first to invite me to Ekiti State. Even though I'm a citizen of Ekiti State, but he was like, look, you're doing things all across other places. You need to come to your state and do something. He was one that invited me to Ado Ekiti, and I met a lot of people there. The First Lady, we went all around there talking about mental health. So I really appreciated that. And I'm glad that you're here today because you can speak in that capacity on in terms of, legislation and how do we carry this into to becoming a systemic structural issues in governance. So I'm glad that you're here. Welcome. And then Tunde Akemi. Tunde Akemi is here. Tunde Akemi, would you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you,
Oh, did he freeze?
Big Sis. Tunde Akemi, and I am a business entrepreneur, what you would call a serial entrepreneur. I am founder and president of Transcendence Inc. It's a direct sales company that runs about 30 people. Basically, we reach out to customers, and we have a partnership with Frontier Communications here in California. I have an interest in mental health because of the amount of people that the company touches on a daily basis. So it's highly important to put a focus, even for myself, as it's been one area where has been highly disregarded as far as personal, and to that recently has been a focus of mine, and I'm glad to be a part of this forum. Thanks for having me.
All right, today's here. Today is also my brother, and I'm so proud of him. I wanted him to be here because he's young, is doing his thing. He's a businessman, and he can speak. And because they work crazy hours, and especially when you're in sales. And so I wanted him to come on and talk about mental health. What should be happening there. So my first question, so welcome everyone. We still have a guest that we're waiting for, Dr. Tony Sambe. Hopefully he'll still join us right now. So the first question I have to you is, as a professional, because I'll come to the personal level in a minute. So think of your profession, think of the people that you see and the people that you meet every day, constituents, your customers, your members, whoever they are. And think of the men. Let's focus on men today. Do you think mental health is a focus for the men that you've met? And so that's one part of the question. The second is, and you should answer the second one first, is what is mental health? What is mental health to you? And do you think men that you meet in your areas of expertise, are they focused on mental health? Let's start with Pastor Shegabi.
Okay, thank you. Well, in answering the second question, I should mention something I forgot in my introduction, that I've actually also served with the NHS as a pastoral spiritual visitor to the mental health wards. And I did this for a period of 3.5 years. And so for me, mental health for men is quite wide and varied. In my experience, I've come across that which can be classified as clinical, which are men who actually know that they have been diagnosed with some specific aspects of mental health within the spectrum of bad to worse, and they are aware, and some of them, it could be bipolar, it could be some other form of mental illness. They are aware. Now, whether they talk about it to those they interact with is a different story. And for this particular man, one of them, I would say, because he's mature, if the discussions come around that, he tends to mention it. And a lot of times he does it as a precursor to sort of let people know how to manage themselves around him when he begins to tend towards that particular episode, when the episode are beginning to encroach. He uses his medications quite regularly. So that's that. Then on the other spectrum, you then have, another, gentleman whose is between clinical and what I'll probably call solical, which is the fact that a lot of it has to do with his upbringing, has to do with his formative years, how he has become as a result of his growing up, and how that has now eventually affected his mental health today. Okay.
Wow.
And then the third character of men I have also interacted with are those that I would say fall into the general category that most of us fall into, even though a lot of us might not want to consider ourselves mental health recipients of mental health attention, but we all do, because we're all works in progress, and we all have our various coping mechanisms to navigate the paths of life, So we all, in some way or the other, qualify for mental health attention. But whether we are able to recognize such a need and then to know where to go or how to ask for such help is completely a different story. And hopefully that's what will be addressed at today's session.
All right. So just to recap, so there are three groups that you've noted. The first group is the one with the clinical diagnosis. This kind of people, they already know, they've been in this mental health system, so they know what's up. They know that maybe they have depression or anxiety or some kind of psychosis or any kind of diagnosis. So this particular man that you're talking about, or men you're talking about, have already made contact with the mental health system.
That's
and
correct.
Then the second category, which is what is very dear to me, are the ones you talked about who have been impacted by their formative years. And that's what we call developmental trauma or adverse childhood experiences. And if you're impacted in your formative years, people don't know that it actually has long-term effects on you into adulthood. And if you don't take care of it, it just becomes you, and you would think that that's you, but that's not really you. Most people think, oh, this is my personality. It's not your personality if it's a trauma-based personality. Does that make sense? But when you've been formed in a way, then you begin to look like the trauma that formed you, and then you build coping mechanisms around that, and you call that your personality. So that's the second group. And of course, the third group you talked about is the general group, who are just trying to survive. And everybody's just trying to make the best of what they have. Thank you. That was really good. Thank you for that. All right. Let's go to Tunde Akemi. What the men that you meet in the business world, what is their relationship with the system, with mental health? Unmute yourself, please.
So, for mental health is, I guess, the focus on, previous trauma and how people are dealing with it. Business is very, very go oriented and high octane. Very little energy is placed on mental health. And so therefore, it is, I guess, replaced by accomplishments and goals and quotas. So therefore, the mental health aspect is on a back burner. It's not a focus, and you get kind of a reward by reaching your goals, by ascending in ranks, and those kind of take the forefront in, I guess, in my business. So we're not really in how's your mental health? It's not a question you're gonna get asked when you show up. But recently, in a kind of a conversation I had with an admin who said the office it's not good for her mental health, which is a big question as to how is this going on? What are the things that need to be addressed in order to be conducive to someone's mental health? I guess language and actions have to now be revised in order to meet people's mental health treatment and so on and so forth. So for trauma, even going through trauma in the workplace, meeting your goals can be traumatic sometimes. So
Yeah.
I guess that also contributes to, mental health problems for a said person who is, attempting to get to a certain level, and might disregard their mental health in the process.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Right. That is so correct. I was talking today. I was a keynote speaker at a law reunion something, and I got to speak on vicarious trauma, which is a professional type of trauma that happens in the workplace. And when you're at a high stress job where you are talking about how the volume you have to make and the number of clients, billable hours, you are constantly on the go, and you are working at capacity of 150%, sometimes 200%. The only problem with that is that our bodies were meant to carry that kind of load. So at some point, you're going to begin to react to it. Your body, they're going to have somatic reactions. Does that make sense? You're going to have somatic reactions. And so, talking to that particular group today just reminded me of what you just said, that nobody's really concerned about their mental health. They're really talking about, how can I make progress, and how can I be the best? How can I be number one? How can I be this? It's always about personal goals and professional goals. Thank you so much for that. And we're still waiting on Dr. Samba. If any, I see him, but his mic isn't on. So can somebody just tell him he needs to turn on his mic so we can put him in the studio? Akin Rotimi, to you. Look, and you have a big constituent out there. So, tell your thoughts about this in terms of men and how they respond to mental health or not respond.
All right, thank you very much. So I'll just take you on the first, point you mentioned about experiences, informing the sort of mental health challenges. So in the course of our work, with Saskia Foundation related with military widows, you can tell that there's a definite trauma that you can trace. First of all, these were wives of people serving in the military over many years. So first of all, there'd been issues of separation because their husbands and spouses are spend considerable time on the roads and that tension of not even knowing where they are for many years, and then eventually now unfortunately leading to their demise in active service to the country. So you can imagine that all that culminates in some sort of response that's on the spouses, the widows, and also the children. You can imagine one of the people that we have within the network actually lived through the trauma of her husband being looked for over a year until today. In the course of an ambush, he just was not found. And over a year, they were looking for him. And according to military rules, it was only after a year that they could then say that he was dead. Till now, she doesn't know whether he's dead or not. But they just said that if he's not found for this period. So you can imagine that trauma, 1 whole year, the wife and the children going through all of that, what it does to them, even till now. You can tell that that's considerable. But on the other aspect, right, because today is International Men's Day, and we're talking within the context of men as well. From my own personal experience engaging, within the Nigerian society generally, I find that very few people, especially men, right, pay attention to their mental health. So within the cultural context, right, there is Mr. Tunde talked about the pressure, to achieve and overachieve. There's that added pressure, right, on men, right? Because men are supposed to be providers, they're meant to be breadwinners, and so there's that increased pressure, right? Expectations from society. I share with people that right now we're having two different sources of pressure. It's not only those that are not doing well financially, and we know that not only in Nigeria, but all over the world, with the economic downturn, people are going through considerable pressure. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not only people that are not doing well financially, but even those that are doing well, right, are receiving the pressure from those that are not doing well. Because, I mean, those that are doing well in that sense are fewer, of course, than those that are not doing well. So everybody has immense pressure. And I'm sure that everyone can relate with that. You have cousins, you have old class friends
Yes.
that have just gone through life, that life has just happened. And so everybody has needs, everybody has one sort of thing or the other, and then they put all that pressure on you. And you see, what I have discovered is that even if it was a healthy pressure, things that, or would I say valid pressure that people are coping with, it would make sense. Like there's someone ill, or there's someone hungry, or there's someone that needs to go to school. Those are things that you can even excuse. But many of the things that I see that, especially within our cultural context, people put on themselves are just unnecessary. I saw someone getting married the other day, and he wanted to pile on the pressure to me, because once he sends an invitation to you, and then he starts sending you, oh, it's 3 weeks away, oh, it's 2 weeks away, Egbon
Get
is 1
those.
week away, Egbon is 5 days. Wait,
Yes.
relax. I call him and say, relax, because by God's grace, I have this aura around myself like I'm a billionaire. I have that aura. Everybody believes I have all the money, and I look, dude. Sometimes it does get really challenging for me myself. So, but I needed to also speak with him that, look, you need to take some of this pressure off yourself. Do what it is that you can afford.
You can
Why
afford.
Exactly. And we have a lot of those cultural issues, right? And expectations. Someone is getting married. What is really the cost of a wedding? Why are you putting all that pressure on yourself? Someone is getting has a funeral to plan. Why are you putting all that pressure on yourself? Why can't we go back to living simply? Well, I don't know. You are older than me. I don't know, but maybe you can tell me if there was ever a time where people actually planned things simply, like within their means. This is what
I
I can
don't think
afford.
so.
But people think, and then everything goes on the men, and there's this what I call male, toxic, like male toxicity, like in the society, expectations from the man to cater, and everybody just thinks that they are that Superman at work. You're
Superman.
under pressure, yes, in your social whatever, living up, trying to just meet up with these things, and all of these things take a toll on men's mental health. So today, I guess that's one of the objectives was today, is to get men to, first of all, recognize that all of these things, in Yoruba, they say, aralon fabosi, as in all these things, all this pressure that keeps coming, it has to find expression somewhere. It's either it has an outlet, or it resides in the body, and it gives different sorts of expressions. People feel sick sometimes. They pressure themselves so much until they get physically sick, right?
Absolutely.
But sometimes it manifests in mental health challenges. People get into all sorts of depression, anxiety, and all these things because they've just taken up and they don't know how to say no. Very few men know how to say, look, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm sorry, I don't have. I'm sorry, but just take it on, and are now looking for several means to be able to meet up. And these are really the issues that get people. So for us to have a healthier society, I think we need to review some of these socio-cultural expectations of the men, which is, at least give it to us for today. I know that we need to try to have some equality for women, but give it to men today to acknowledge that men are on the uneven, right? It's uneven, the pressure. Well, maybe I won't say that outright, because I know women also have quite a lot. I mean, in terms of gender roles and all of that, quite a bit of pressure as well. But men also, if I'll put it that way, men also, right, have considerable pressure. But society never permits a man to break down. Society never permits a man to cry at his father's funeral. Society never permits a man to admit and say, look, I'm under pressure, I need help. Society never permits a man to say, I need to rest from everything. So these are the issues that I think need to be.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You've really covered a few of the conversation points today. So societal expectations, for example, the pressure that is being put on men. And no, today we're not going to try to have any comparisons. Today is International Men's Day, so we are going to speak about men. So feel free to speak about men without having to apologize for speaking about men. Today, all right, is your day. Only your day today. It's yours. All right, so take it. You only got 24 hours. So spend it well. Spend this currency. Men are not allowed to be human, is what I'm hearing. They're not allowed to be human. They're this picture of superheroes. And when you can't meet those expectations, then things begin to break down. And then when they break down, we now say, why are you breaking down? You now start getting accusation about you're being lazy, you're being this, you're all of that. So it's almost like a two-edged sword. You can break down, but the body can only take so much. So when you do break down, because you will break down in one way or the other, and when that happens, then people also begin to talk about you. Thank you for all of those responses. Mental health is our ability to be emotionally well, ability to be psychologically well, socially connected, our ability to be financially able to sustain ourselves, to be spiritually whole. That's all mental health. Mental health is everything. It's our well-being. So when people try to separate mental health from other things, it's like you can't separate breath from the air that you breathe, right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. So that's what mental health is. And I thank you for really highlighting and punctuating all the points that you presented. Now, my second question has to do with something that Akin Rotimi actually talked about: male toxicity. Let me read to you what male toxicity is. A lot of you have probably heard it. You've heard about male toxicity, and it's not used in a good way, by the way. It's used in a bad way. So let me read the definition of male toxicity, and I want you to respond to it. What your thoughts are about this. So this is the definition for the study of Journal of the School of Psychology, and here is their definition. This is definition of toxic masculinity is what I'm going to say. Toxic masculinity, and that is the constellation of socially regressive in brackets masculine traits that serve to foster domination, the devaluation of women, homophobia, and wanton violence. Basically, when we're talking about male toxic masculinity, we're talking as a set of certain male behaviors that's associated with give me one quick second. That's associated with harm to society and men themselves. So traditional stereotypes of men as socially dominant, along with related traits such as misogyny and stuff, can be considered toxic due in part to their promotion of violence, including sexual assault and domestic violence. So when people talk about toxic masculinity, they're talking about some things that are, they think that any type of domination, any type of showing the alpha male, that could be considered toxic masculinity. I want you to speak to it. We're on this program, we're not politically correct. And so you'd be free to speak as you believe. And so what do you think about toxic masculinity, Pastor Shegun Banjoko?
Right. I would say it's my first time of hearing that term, but it's not my first time of hearing of the narrative.
Okay.
So the narrative is out there. I won't even want to bother with who might be those behind that narrative and how, but we want to look at how true it is and then the nature of it. I will say from my experience and from my knowledge that that is probably one extreme of the pendulum of what masculinity ought to be. That is like the extreme of one end. And then you've got the extreme of the other end, which is the man that's been so beaten down, so reduced, so bullied, right from his childhood by different, both male and female genders, to a point where he actually has lost every self-confidence, So you've got two extremes, and what you just read out to us comes across as one extreme, and we're hoping that the more mental health awareness is brought to the surface, especially where it concerns men, that either side can begin to make their journey to the center a place of balance, a place of, because the Bible says that an unjust balance is an abomination before the Lord. And if it can be an abomination before the Lord, you can imagine what it is to human beings. That's why there's so much spewing out of aggression and complaint and hostility against this. The typical male man in the US is viewed, the black man is viewed as a weapon. Just his skin is a weapon, and the police force, the security agencies, just the community there, you just see a black man and immediately you're thinking you have weaponized his identity.
Wow.
He doesn't even stand a chance. He's got no weapon on him. Just his blackness is a weapon. And this is how society view a lot of black men. It might be different in different cultures, in Africa, in Nigeria, in the UK, but I think there's generally that very strong extreme narrative, about masculinity. And I think masculinity actually ought to be a gift, is a plus. It's meant to be protective. It's meant to be a strength for, not against. So that's what I would chip in for now. But as the contributions come together, it becomes a lot more interesting.
Wow, what you said, I love what you said. You said blackness is weaponized. I just love that. That's a hashtag. We got to put on a hashtag. That's your hashtag right there. Blackness is weaponized. You don't even have to have a weapon. You are weaponized. And one of the things I like about this panel is you represent. Segun Banjoko is based in the UK. Tunde Akinyemi is based in the US. Akinrotimi is both Canada and Nigeria. And so we cover a pretty, broad spectrum here. And so I appreciate that masculine. And then the thing about about the two extremes, the man, the one that really touched me was what you said about the man who has been beaten down and broken down and has lost every confidence. That type of man, what does it look like? A man that has been broken and beaten down, what does it do? How do we recognize that man? And where does it go from here? You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So think about that question, because you're going to respond to it. And after I go through, like that the man that's been beaten down and broken down, what do you do for that man? How do we help that kind of man to become who he's supposed to be? Tunde, your turn in terms of toxic masculinity. You're muted. Okay.
Well, as it relates to in a business environment, I guess it'll have to do a lot of language, as in, say, motivational phrases. A lot of the motivational phrases that we use is
Oh, I think we lost him. Can you guys hear me? Did I lose him, or
no. I can hear you. I think
all of you.
His connectivity might be going through a
Okay.
problem.
Your reward is you're like every 2 weeks
Tunde, your network isn't good. Tunde, your network isn't good. Can you do something with it and then come back? We're losing you. You keep going in and out.
Can you hear me?
Are you back? Hello? Okay, let's go to Akinrotimi. We'll come back to you today. Let's go to Akinrotimi. Akinrotimi, your turn. Just in response, did you hear my definition? Did you hear when I read the definition of toxic masculinity? Okay, just a response to that, please.
Thank you. And thank you to Pastor Shegun.
No, hold on. We'll mute Sunday and tell him. Can you send him a text and tell him that is we'll mute him. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I'll just take it from where Pastor Shegun, stopped, right? I'll see it as a spectrum, a broad spectrum. And just like you rightly identified, you can be on one extreme, which is the point where, male in society are, put down and, just debased so much to the level, and a lot of people that wrongly understand what feminism is and don't understand that it's really about equality and both people supporting, both genders supporting each other and having a healthy society where there's some sort of equality, but also understanding what roles are, right? So it's not about affirming, feminism is not about putting down the man, but, you find people on that extreme and then putting down the man, and then, on the societal level. And on the other hand, right, there's a situation where you put so much pressure, right, on the expectations from the man. I think what we need to do is to find ourselves, society just needs to find ourselves in that sweet spot where men are just allowed, to be, yes, there's some traditional roles that are expected of man in society where men can feel comfortable, taking up and asserting themselves in, but that, the unhealthy pressure, right, is out of it. So again, it boils down to issues of expectations of even in accessing support, right? You hear things like be a man, you're a man now, a man, and things like that. What does that mean really? You're a man, does it mean the person is not a human being? Does it mean that the person would not break down and feel those pressures as well? So this is some of the things that need to be addressed on a societal level, in my opinion, generally, for people to understand, right, that men should just be allowed to be. Men also deserve, right, and shouldn't feel somehow taking themselves out on a treat or doing something that makes them release pressure and distress. The same way the woman can go and have a spa day and do all sorts of things. So the man also, is entitled to that. So just like someone said, yes, Jide Craig, you're very right. An indirect result of a lack of understanding of the natural role of sexes, yes, and societal roles. And then I don't want to touch very quickly on this issue of pressures across jurisdictions and how these things manifest themselves. Like you rightly said, in the UK, it's one thing entirely. In the US, where your male skin is just, is weaponized. I mean, I know some people that when they go to the US from Nigeria, they like to wear native materials to say, look, me, I'm not African American, I am African African. So whatever stereotypes you have, I just came here for holiday. I'm not part of your, because driving alone in the US, those and these are issues. We have a lot of African immigrant communities, a lot of people that also go through these issues. But in Nigeria, now imagine the young male that's just struggling. Opportunities are shut out on him. We have a very elitist system. So like someone said, you never hear when NNPC and CBN are recruiting. Is NSCDC and Peace Corps and all those places that they make available to the masses. So we have a very, very elitist system, a lot of cronyism in government. So people can't even access, right, they can't access the opportunities to be able to work hard, right? The way that a man is built. I want to work hard. I want to earn. I want to take care of my family. I want to take pride in my work. I don't want to beg, right? Now, you don't have those opportunities. Now, all of the sectors of the economy where people have done well are areas that are not because of government support or society support, but it's been in spite of them not having support. So areas of IT, other areas like that. Now you then find that a young guy that carries his laptop, maybe he's just a website designer, and he's going around, I don't know where I'm echoing, but he's just going around, and you then have that whole police brutality thing where they then target young men. How do you want them to also survive? So all of that puts them under that additional pressure, and that's what you found with the NSAS thing, where it was essentially a thing of a societal thing, mental health pressure, not only on men, but people generally, everybody generally, but disproportionately affecting the young male, where a lot of people had been killed, a lot of people had gone missing, a lot of people had been injured, detained, just for trying to earn a living. So you see how, again, it disproportionately affects men to a very large extent. And it just got to the point where it blew up, and, we had that sort of manifestation on a societal level. Unfortunately, that's a societal level. Everybody knows about the episode of NSAS, but many people don't know about the individual expressions of the blow off, right? So there are a lot of young boys, a lot of young men are also blowing off because they just can't also meet up with expectations and their responsibilities, because society has just been rigged against them in so many ways that they have to struggle, and then on to the point where there's a breaking point.
Well, thank you for that. Let me just piggyback on this a little bit, because we're talking about the different roles of men and the different ways in which they're marginalized, and the different ways in which society, depending on where your society is, if you're in the West, it's about your blackness that's weaponized. If you're in Africa, it's specifically in Nigeria, like you were talking about, it's access. They call it an elitist system, where the haves and the ones who don't have. If you don't have access, then you struggle then to be the definition of the man that we know. So my question then is, which is going to change for Tunde, and then the rest of you can look at it, is, okay, so because we have this patriarchal system that sometimes subordinates women. I told you today, I was in a place with a whole bunch of sons and judges and stuff, and out of all of about 30 of them, there were very few women who were even represented in the justices and in the SANs in Nigeria, for example. And so women struggle to be recognized in some of these positions, although they're doing very well. They're doing better than before, like in our parents' day. So the question then is, who is a man? When we talk about a man, so we're not talking about the stereotypical, like Shegun was saying, Pastor Shegun was saying, the person who is going to really lord it over you and force you to do stuff, and who is toxic. And on the other hand is the person who is beaten down and who is constantly being relegated and told that they don't belong. Okay, so we have those two extreme ends. So we talk about balance, but who is a man? Tell us what a man looks like. I'm not talking about physically, but what does it represent? Like, what does it represent? What is the role of a man? So if it's not this toxicity that we're talking about, and if it's not this person that has been beat down, then let the man rise up and let's say that's a man. So when we say that's a man, what are we talking about? Let's start with you. Yeah. I think his network is messing with him, and you're not in Lagos. How is your network so messed up? Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. A man, I believe, is someone who has come to terms with the person inside who is fine and void of outside input on what he should be. So, in the last question about, toxic masculinity, talking about both, different extremes, there are some truths to that. And then there are some invalid points, as it relates to what a man should be, which, in some instances, it might contribute to what we can refer to as feminine men or feminine male person. But a man is one who has, comes to terms with his, masculine self, which is, has a spiritual understanding, a mental understanding, takes care of, the inner person, doesn't hurt himself in order to prove a point, and doesn't do harm to others in order to prove a point of being a man. Is able to express weaknesses, which there is strength in that, and is a person, all in all, can relate to a feminine and to a masculine, at the same level of understanding of how to approach both instances. That's who I would describe as a man.
Wow, 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 wow. I love it. I love it. I love it. Wow. He said somebody who has come to terms with the person on the inside, and somebody who has a spiritual understanding of the fact that of who he is, and doesn't hurt himself in order to prove who he is, but also it doesn't hurt others to prove who he is. So if you are good with self, you're good with yourself, right? And you know who you are, then you don't have to prove anything to society. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. But at the same time, you're not going to hurt other people in order to prove something. I really like that. Having an understanding of who you are means that you stand like, the mountains don't have to prove anything. The plants don't have to prove anything. And the ocean just is the glory of an ocean right there. The ocean is just being an ocean. The trees are just being who they are. So what I'm hearing you saying is, if a man can live from in the inside, and that we have to also sparse out. We have to deconstruct. How do you live from the inside? We'll come to that in a minute. Thank you so much for your response. And we'll go to Pastor Shegun Banjoko.
Thank you.
Pastor Shegun Banjoko, you have two things that you're willing to respond to. The first one is, who is a man? Because I would like to have all three definitions of who a man is. And the other thing I wanted you to respond to is, how do we recognize a man who has been beaten and broken? How do we recognize that man?
Right. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate what Tony just said. Now, to be able to understand who a man is, you've got to understand that that man that has just been described by Tony is a man in a moment in time. He did not just become a man like that. He was once a boy. And if you do not understand his journey, you're going to miss out on where he's going. So people get to meet men at different points in their journey. And if you are not privy to the antecedents and those factors that have made them who they are, it would be an inaccurate assessment of who that man is. Now, the responsibility, I would say, the responsibility of who that man is rests on that man. He has got to be comfortable in his personality, whatever that might be. All right. Now, if a man has been raised to compare himself with his siblings, if he's been raised to be in a very competitive environment, It can have two things. It could either beat down his self-esteem because he's going to be constantly thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. Or he's going to end up being an extremely brutish person who feels that there's no joy until he has conquered, or he has pushed somebody down. So there's no, that every man has got to be able to know who his true identity, and what is that measure of the true man. I believe without any I don't have to excuse myself that Bible says we are created in God's image and in God's likeness. All right. So if a man in his growing up years has not had the privilege of a godly upbringing, then he's going to definitely need an input from other sources to bring him to that recognition of his innate God nature. I am actually dealing with a case right now of a young man in the UK. He's an Englishman, but when I first met him, he just kept knocking himself down. He's extremely intelligent. Every time he would like to talk to me, he would say, hold on, he's going to remove himself from the house and go into a very quiet place to be able to feel free to talk. And at the moment, I'm seeing a lot of potential tragedy because he's almost resigning himself to the fact that, well, if I do not fall in love with this person that I really love, it's okay. I will live the rest of my life as a single man. Maybe I'm not destined to marry. That is the closest I can describe to that other extreme of the spectrum. This is a real guy. This is extremely intelligent, got a good job. He's not even black. He's a white guy.
It's not even black.
He's had his personality so emaciated that he's, so when we're talking about we from Africa, let's look at what is working for us. Most of us now, and this young man I'm talking about has come up through both parents. So it's not come up through a single parent family. It's come up through both parents. But there's just certain things that he has come through in his upbringing that has made him so low in his self-esteem. He's not a go-getter where relationships are concerned, and he feels that probably he's going to, and he's quite comfortable with the idea of spending the rest of his life without love. And it's not because he actually would he's had one or two female friends, but because he feels that if they don't respond to his toasting and expression of interest, he wouldn't bother. He's okay. He will just stay as he is for the rest of his life. And I'm thinking, no, I'm on your case, and in so many ways. First of all, prayer, and also being able to engage with him, because the moment a man feels isolated, when a man feels isolated, either from his upbringing, he's going to think he's alone in that world. And the moment you are isolated in your mind, you have become literally an accident looking for somewhere to happen.
Yes.
So we need to, I actually met him, and I thought, I'm not going to leave this guy alone. I'm going to be his friend. And the moment I showed myself friendly, he began to gravitate towards me, and, it's a work in progress. But I think one of the first things we should do as men, if we are men, with enough self-awareness of who we are, is to be there for those that we feel are on either ends of the spectrum, and begin to pull men into draw them close to ourselves. You see, because men naturally don't asked to be a friend to another man, you know, we are the ones that must invite them to become our friends. Jesus said, I do not call you servants, I call you friends. He pulled
Mm,
people close to him.
yeah.
Naturally, people want to stay away. They want to serve. They want to just, do things. But it takes the invitation of the bigger man, or the invitation of the, not let me just say bigger, but the more whole man, the wholer man, to reach out. And that could be your son, it could be your nephews, it could be your younger ones, whatever it is. Pull them in and let them know they're not alone. That is by far much more important than wanting to give them that sense of being driven, achieve and achieve, because they're going to end up just pushing themselves up that hill. And
Yeah.
so that's my contribution.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to even give examples of what a weakened state a man can be when they've been stripped of all of their own wellness. I really, as you all know, I talk on trauma all the time, and he's like, "Why do you talk trauma?" Well, because if you understand how trauma impacts the brain, everybody will be talking about trauma. Because once your brain has been hijacked by trauma that you've experienced either developmentally or in a relationship, when your brain has been hijacked, you have to do something to get it back to reset. And most people don't even know that their brains are hijacked. So they continue living as if everything is okay when everything is not okay. If it's hysterical, it is historical. So that means if you find yourself reacting to something, underreacting or overreacting to something, say things like that guy said, oh, it's no problem, not anything, you're just very laissez-faire, underreacting. Or if you're overreacting to something, it means that there's a history there. And you need to find out what that history is so that you can heal it and mend it. Men do not heal alone. Men need mentors. I watched, I watch a lot of Turkish shows. And one of the things that really interests me with in these shows, it's just the sense of community. The sense of community. There's always a grandparent or a great grandparent, and there's always a father and a grandfather, great grandfather who is mentoring all the men. Do you understand what I'm saying? And there's this community, and then the women are also being mentored by their mothers and their grandmothers, and so you have this community of intergenerational blessings as opposed to intergenerational woundings. Does this make sense? And so I think men, like you've said, Pastor Banjoko, you've said, men need men to mentor them. Men need men, not just mentoring, just to be in their lives. To be in their lives. We all have a sense of, so there should be the older one, the middle one, and then the one that is just coming up as 10 years old, that all are surrounded. In my profession, the number is 6. That 6 is the number of safeguarding. So which means that there should be at least 6 people in your lives that you can talk to, and they can talk to you without any type of hindrances. So you're open to them. So any man watching us today, try to find your number 6. It's not just one person or 2 people, but a bunch of people, that are gathered around you. They surround you, and that is how you learn how to be. No man can decide how to be by themselves, because we are interconnected. A baby doesn't just grow by themselves. They look at the person that is mirroring to them. And so I think men need men that will speak to them, like you said, bring them from the toxicity to the one who is wounded, and bring them all into the fold. And I hope men will begin to find men to hang out with, to be with. Does that make sense? Thank you for sharing that. King, what do you have to say about this? If we're going to round up and take some of these questions.
Thank you very much. I think the other speakers and yourself, you've put a lot of things in context. I've been following the comments as well. Very apt. Someone said that the man is the sum total. I'm just paraphrasing of everything that has happened to the person, from your experiences, people you've met, places you've worked, relationships you've been in, everything, that has gotten you to that point. So the first point that I wanted to make is about personal responsibility, and I think that's the hallmark of what being a man is, to say that, look, a lot of things could have gotten you to this point when you didn't have any control over. There was this guy in the Bible, if I might use that expression, Mephibosheth, and we know his story, how that in all of the crises, people that actually wanted to help him, it was said that the nurses carried him to run, to take him to safety, and he was dropped, and he became what? He became lame at both his feet. So many times, people that even wanted to help you, people that wanted to do good for you, even raising you and all of that, were actually causing you trauma, not knowing. So over the years, you might have gotten to that point, right, where you didn't have control over things. You hadn't even come to the point of self-awareness when all those things happen to you. So you need to get to the point where you don't ascribe to anybody or to any experience the person you've become, because really you don't have any control of the things that happen to you. The only thing you have control over is how you respond and how you treat and heal yourself of all those things. So I think that's the hallmark of being a man. And to be honest, it can come at the age of 8, it can come at the age of 12, it can come at the age of 18, and you still find some people in their 70s that haven't come to that point where they take personal responsibility for healing themselves of whatever trauma it is, and then now creating the right boundaries around themselves to ensure that they are healthy and that they are able to, without being hard, but they are able to build the right barriers to make sure that nothing gets to them to affect their mental health. So that's one thing, personal responsibility. So it's my chat to men that it is your personal responsibility to look at it and say, okay, this job, right, it pays so much, right? But it's a toxic environment, right? And having to take a pay cut, doing something else, because over time it's going to affect you. Or that relationship that you've been patching up for so long, but it's not good for you, right? At a point in time, you're going to have to say, look, it has to go. Or some other things that you need to take personal responsibility. So life doesn't just keep happening to you as a man. You take the steering wheel for yourself, for your life. And to a very large extent, when it comes to issues of mentoring, right, you are able to also help steer younger people after you, because it is only, they said hurt people, right? And healed people definitely can heal people. So it is when you take responsibility and you're healed and you're whole and you're wholesome, that you can then also find young people, it might be your biological children, to ensure that if there's been any generational issues that you've had, it's look, it stopped here with me, and I take responsibility for ensuring that my offspring are healed, are whole, and they grow up with the right sort of coping mechanisms and outlook to life that will ensure that they have very good mental health. The second point I wanted to mention very quickly is about how do you know and how do you figure out that there's something amiss, there's something wrong. Like if someone has malaria now, the signs are there, or I have a fever, I have a headache, or I have body pains, and then people immediately tell you that, oh, look, could it be this, could it be that? Why don't you get, and all of that. So there are telltale signs for physical health, right? When physical health is deteriorating, right? But people don't know how to recognize, right, the issues around mental health. Many people don't know when, you are approaching, slowly being pushed to the point where you're going to have a mental health breakdown, or being pushed to the point where you grow a disorder or something else. People don't know. I remember when, I had a lot of pressure, and I just noticed that you're snapping at people a lot more. You're taking things a little more than, and then you have to backtrack and say, look, okay, what is going on, right? And that took me a while to educate myself and understand. And because I have gotten to that point now where I now understand that, look, these are the signs where you're just under so much pressure, right? Or something is triggering you. This is happening. You now have to put it and say, look, let me address these issues, and then be able to live healthier. So now I've gotten to the point where in my circle, I can recognize it, with men. And I'm the one now, by God's grace, in my circle, with friends, I can call them and say, look, guy, what is going on with you? I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that. You need to relax. I gave you the example of the guy getting married that I had to call him. You know, I mean, it wasn't the response he wanted. He wanted me to give him cash immediately, but I had to tell him, look, don't do that. Don't go into, don't go into that sort of pressure. Let it go. Let it. So I think society needs more people that are educated and aware, emotionally aware of the signs when people are going through issues. Because the other day we had someone that got over the point, and there's been that argument of a lady that it got to the point where unfortunately she took her own life, but she was with someone. She was with an Uber driver, right, that was taking her across the Third Mainland Bridge. If only that person at least had some sort of awareness around mental health issues and could tell that, look, this person is at risk, right? Why would someone tell you to stop in the middle of Third Mainland Bridge? If only that. So right now is the what ifs. What if that person had said, no, I'm not stopping, and then gotten her to the point of safety? But point is that it's a very, very sensitive matter, right, to be able to navigate. But we need more people to be aware and be available, right, to help create a healthier society. And it's like I said, it's understanding that mental health is as important as physical health, right?
Absolutely.
You wouldn't make somebody that has a fever that's burning at 39 degrees, you won't make that person go to work, right? But if someone wants accommodation to say, look, I can't make it to work today because I'm just feeling really bad, people would say, oh, that person is lazy, doesn't want to do this, doesn't want to do that. So those are the issues where bosses, where superiors, where subordinates in various contexts around, but we need to be more sensitive to the issues and help men. Yes, Mr. Jide Craig, you're very correct. Men need each other, but I think it's also important, men need the women in their lives as well, even as much as the women in their lives also need men. Everybody needs everybody to have a healthier society.
Well, thank you so much. Look, mental health is health. Mental health is health. We understand this. There's no health without mental health. Thank you for really buttressing that point, punctuating it, amplifying it, that please recognize that your mental health is important. And I want to say this to the women in us women in your lives, in the men's life, that look, the different types of trauma. If you follow me on any of the social media forum, I just put some things out on trauma. One of the ones that I put out was the two types of traumas I want us to focus on: type 1 and type 2. The type 1 traumas are like, you beat me up, physical assault, sexual assault, violence, that kind of thing, natural disasters, type 1 traumas. But type 2 traumas, and those are sometimes the ones that the men suffer, not just men, but we're focused on men today, is that constant put downs at home. When somebody's constantly putting you down, you're not going to amount to anything. You're this, you're that. You're shouting on the guy all the time, constantly shouting on them. That is traumatic for people. When you are belittling somebody, you're taking their power away. So the guy was sharing with us that he got home and his wife said something that made him cry. There's some things about women. We have ways with words. We can build and we can tear down. And so we also, using our words, I think that the war of the sexes needs to end, and we all need to realize that we're in this together. That we're building just as the men are building each other up, but all of us together are also nurturing the men in our lives, making sure that we're speaking life into them and making sure that we are using our tongue for kindness. Remember when I used to teach my kids on how to be kind, because it's easy to be kind to people outside. And the mandate that summer was, you need to be kind to yourselves. You need to be kind to the people in this house. And the same thing. So not just the people outside, that man also needs kindness. That woman in your life also needs kindness. So if we can all just be kind to each other, the way when somebody is yelling, for example, look, don't be mad at them. There's a trauma in their life that's upregulated them. Do you understand? So what I'm saying is, if we recognize trauma as the culprit, we will stop fighting each other so much, because you understand that hurt people hurt people. If somebody has been messed up, they're going to hurt. So let's begin to heal. I encourage everyone to begin to heal. Heal thyself, find help, go out there and begin to say, I need help. I want to know what's up with me. That's how we begin to build better structures and a better community. I want to say thank you. Some of these questions, you've already responded to them as you spoke. I think we've addressed a lot of this. Toxic masculinity. Somebody wanted to know, how do we have gender equality? Gender equality. What about a patriarchal society? This can make masculinity toxic. How do we cultivate balance between sexes? And I think we've addressed that in some of the things that we've said today. So I want to say thank you. You've actually stayed longer than we expected. It's been over an hour. We've been talking. Please come back again. We should have a part 2 of this. And I'm going to go around just last words.
Well, for me,
they said Dr. Sombe is here.
For me, yeah.
Hold on, please. It says Dr. Sombe is here. How come I can't see him? Adam.
Can you hear me?
Just a minute. Dr. Sombe, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Thank you.
Oh, we're just finishing, but you made it just in time, Dr. Sombe. Thank you for coming. I know you've had technology issues. We're talking about men today because it's International Men's Day. And we're just going around to give some last words on what you want to leave for the audience to know about men's mental health. Our focus today is men's mental health. So we're going to...
Sorry.
Excuse me?
Can I just quickly say one thing before you round up?
Well, I'm going to give you the opportunity to say something right now, and then we'll go to the rest of the panel. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess that we might have missed out poor parenting and the fact that individuals, especially men, are cognitively wired and they assume so many things based on their own sense of ration. Meanwhile, the women folk, they are emotionally wired. You can see the contrast. These are dynamics that may make the man to come down with mental ill health. Above all we need to do is watch out for signs. And whatever we do not understand, let us ventilate, let us ask questions. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, wow. I thought you were going to say more.
I guess that because you were complaining of time, so I wanted to manage it so that the gentlemen who have been having their day will completely have their day.
All right. Thank you. All right. Yeah. So any last words? Let's start with Pastor Segun Manjoko. What are your last words before we end the show?
Okay. Yeah. Last words will be, when the Bible says, God said, I wish above all things that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. You see, it is God's wish. Let's make his wish come true. Let's look after our health, especially our mental health. That's what he refers to, the prosperity of your soul. That's mental health there. That your soul may prosper, that's mental health right there. So for those of us who are very much Christian-minded and Bible-minded, which I think a lot of Nigerians all over are, let's understand that it is actually the topmost wish of God, above your achieving, above your making money, is that you are in health. So that's my last word.
And your soul prospers. It leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. So, he was wounded for our transgression, bruised for our iniquities, the chastisement of our peace. That word peace there has to do with your soul. So it's been addressed so many times. Thank you for bringing that up. Akirotimi.
Thank you very much. Definitely, it's a good place to start from. God wants us to be in health. I want every man to know that if you're having any challenges, seek help. Right? There is more prevalence of mental health challenges than you would even know. We didn't know even our president had mental health challenges because it was his wife, the first lady, that mentioned that, look, for many years she had to deal with a spouse that had PTSD from, how will you not have PTSD? From fighting in the Congo, fighting in Biafran, war, fighting all sorts of things. And she just let us know, and a lot of people were shocked, but that's the reality. The point I'm making is that more people have mental health challenges than you'd ever know. So no one should feel out of place seeking help. Nobody should feel out of place seeking help. This story about be a man, there's nothing like that. Being a man, part of being a man is also knowing when to seek help and getting help from the right sources. For me, I believe that this should be an investment in greater conversations on this subject. I'm always happy to join in on this. That is why I am running for office personally. If you'd allow me to chime in, Professor Merino, www.akinrotimi.com. You can have a look at it and follow me, because I want to be one of the people in the parliament, in the Nigerian legislature, that would advocate for these issues, to make sure that we have the sort of the legislative framework and programs and policies that support people with mental health challenges and contribute to having a healthier society that leaves no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Akinrotimi. And it's one of the reasons I invited you, because I know you're really pro mental health. And when you do get elected, hopefully you do, because I support you. This is not a political thing. He's my brother. I support him. So, because he gets it, Akin gets it. So, well done to you. Tunde. Oh my God, Tunde, I cannot believe you're in the US. You are not representing US well at all with this, your network. Go ahead. Do you have last words?
Thank you so much for the invitation, and just for every male person to, as everyone has mentioned, to seek help and to always reach out with a hand, either to get pulled up or to pull up one another. I know mentorship came up, and it's as simple as a phone call to somebody you want to mentor or who you're seeking to mentor you. Nothing happens unless actions are taken. So we can start to sow those seeds either by being a mentor to somebody or by seeking out someone in whom we want to be our mentor that we find any type of admiration in. And we can start to build ourselves into a solid community of strong men by doing that. And that's my last word.
Well done. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you. Look, you have this hashtag there that you said. We need to, as a community, begin to just know that men are not. We can't just keep talking about men as if they're toxic. People need to stop talking just from their own experiences and look at the world. There's a bigger world out there. Just because you have been battered, which is not a good thing. Just had a bad experience with one man, or one woman for that matter. But today's Men's Day does not mean that all men are bad. It doesn't mean that all men are batterers and stuff. There is a whole world of men out there who are doing well, right? And we one of the reasons for doing this show is that we can build each other up, and we can build each other up again. So thank you so much for being here. I know that men, I know, the brain, the way the brain is wired for the men, the men's brain is built linear. So people always interpret that as cognitive. It's not that. It's just a linear brain, and the women's brain is interconnected. So because it's a lot of multiple things going on, and I can do a whole talk on that at some point. But today we've had enough conversation, and I thank you for coming, and I will see you next time. All right, stay
Thank
with
you
me.
very
Stay
much.
with
Thank
me.
you.
Stay with me.
Thank you.